Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm Margaret Brennan, and it is time now for some political analysis. Reihan Salam is the executive editor of the National Review, a policy fellow at the National Review Institute, and now a contributing editor at The Atlantic. Amy Walter is the national editor of the Cook Political Report, and starting next month will be the host of WNYC's The Takeaway. Congrats. Jamelle Bouie is the chief political correspondent at Slate and a CBS News political analyst. And Gearan is a White House correspondent at The Washington Post. Amy, let's start off with you. You have all this forecasting of what could be happening in Congress, what might be happening with the president that could influence the outcome in November. You've been writing about what isn't happening. Essentially, the Republicans aren't defecting. They're not running away now that Speaker Ryan has chosen to retire, or whatever we're going to call it. So is the forecasting really kind of wrong at this point, that there'll be a Democratic wave?
I think the challenge always in this era is figuring out what's noise and then what's actually happening, right? Because there's chaos all the time and trying to separate that out from reality. And so it seems like we have a number of different factors to look at. The first is what you talked about with Larry Kudlow today, which is the fact the economy is doing really well and that the president gets higher ratings on how he's handling the economy than his overall job approval. So which is more important, the way that people think he's doing on the economy or what they think about him as president, and how that translates to how they vote? Are they going to pick the economy, or are they going to say, yeah, the economy may be doing well, but I really don't like him personally, and I'm going to cast my vote that way? And then you have to look at what we've seen in the polling, but also what we're seeing on the ground. We know that in all these special elections, Democrats have outperformed where they normally should be. Their average vote, they've outperformed by almost 10 points. And so is that the right number, or the polls the right number? All of these things I think are going to get mushed together. I think the real question, and this is going to be the challenge for Paul Ryan as we get into these next couple months here of what's going on in Washington, is can Congress stop fighting amongst itself? I think that's when Republicans have their biggest challenge, was when they had the healthcare fight. The president was fighting with Republicans, tweeting against Republicans. Now we have immigration. We may have trade. Those things, if they split the party, I think only benefit Democrats. And one last thing, I think the attention that is being focused, especially in the media, on the Stormy Daniels or on Russia, is actually helping Republicans, because what's not getting through is what the Democrats want to talk about, which is the health care challenges in the wake of a health care bill that never really passed or doesn't fix the health care system, and rising costs for some other goods. They want to be able to make that case. They can't get that through.
You mentioned immigration. We know the president will be holding an immigration roundtable later this week. I want to play a soundbite, something he said this week that caused some problems.
We have people coming into the country, or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before.
The president says he was talking specifically about gang members from MS-13, that he was not speaking writ large about immigrants. That's certainly not how the Mexican government took it, and Jamelle, that's not what a lot of people heard here. And the White House said that was unfair criticism of it.
Yeah, the idea that that's unfair criticism, I think, ignores the fact that for the past, 3 years now, the president has made this consistent linkage between Hispanic immigrants and crime, and Hispanic immigrants and disorder. And so in his campaign announcement speech, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, some of them I assume are good people. In speeches and addresses and off-the-cuff remarks, again and again, the president has made that linkage. And so even in this particular case where he's responding to a hypothetical question about an MS-13 gang member, he doesn't, note his language. He doesn't talk specifically about MS-13 gang members. He talks specifically about these people, which is vague and a bit slippery, and it's unclear exactly what he means. But that is in keeping with his past language. I think that when evaluating these kind of comments and evaluating this kind of imprecision, I'm not sure we should give the benefit of the doubt towards the president only referring specifically to this one group of people. And having said that, even if that was the case, I do think there's a serious problem with the president dehumanizing any group of people in the United States, even if they are hardened criminals. I think it opens a door to really problematic actions from federal law enforcement who take that as a cue for how they should approach gang members, how they should approach people that are within their enforcement purview. So, setting aside the political controversy over what the president means, I think there's a real sort of pragmatic and ethical problem with the president speaking about people as, quote, animals.
And it caused a diplomatic incident, Anne.
Yeah, I mean, the president keeps doing this through imprecision. It is clear when you listen to the whole conversation that the woman sheriff who was speaking right before him was speaking about her lived experience of what she does when she can identify or when her agents can, from time to time, see somebody that they would like to be able to report to federal authorities for possible deportation, but are not able to fully report that because of a conflict between state and federal law. Way too complicated for what the president wanted to talk about, clearly, because his response then is, these people are animals. And that's what the Mexican government hears. It's what Central American governments hear as well. I don't think that this is something that the president cares to fix. I mean, we don't know for sure, but he doesn't. He keeps doing it. He keeps using charged language, which appeals on a political level, not only to his own core supporters, but potentially to Republicans who are in the middle of their own immigration issues. We saw a different kind of split on immigration over the Farm Bill on Friday. We could talk about that too. But this is immigration, and what Congress does or doesn't do about it is one of the things that's hanging fire before the 2018 midterms, and the president has views on that.
Reihan, is this a useful mechanism to continue to return to, the mantra about immigration and immigrants?
I do think that it's a centrally important issue. I think that it was an incredibly important part of the president's appeal. But just to give you a bigger picture sense, the politics of immigration have changed pretty markedly over the last 10 years or so. Earlier on, there was this belief that there was a bipartisan deal to be had. Democrats wanted a path to legal status, and Republicans wanted essentially a large amount of guest worker, low-wage migration. That was believed to be this workable consensus. The trouble is that actually the Republicans who believed that were a very narrow slice of the party that was not, in fact, representative of the party's rank and file. So then there is the possibility of some other deal, maybe, but the thing is that then you have President Trump as the reaction to that deal from the right. Seeing an opportunity that there was a rupture between the elite of the Republican Party and the base of the Republican Party, so he comes in and offers a more hardline stance. As it happens, though, many of his own supporters also support a path to legal status for some number of unauthorized migrants. Now, the problem is, how do you then course correct again? So if you see President Trump as making this one correction to a false understanding of what was the Republican consensus position, then you have to have some other course correction. The problem now, however, is that on the Democratic side, over the intervening decade, there's also been a pretty marked change. One of the false claims that the president made is that he's deporting more of these people than ever. Now, what does these people mean? Who knows? But we do know that President Obama, in his first term, actually was far more successful in deporting criminal unauthorized migrants, right? But the thing is that that has actually become a very hotly contested issue on the Democratic side. With things that used to be just very taken for granted, you had all sorts of Democrats, including liberal Democrats, who felt like, well, that's a common sense measure. Those things are very hotly contested by activists on the left. So the politics of immigration are very much in flux. There is a new center to be found. I believe the president can find it, but to do that, he cannot use rhetoric of this kind. He has to make it clear that I'm making a distinction between dangerous migrants and also those that pretty much everyone across the political spectrum has decided. A very broad swath of people have said, we need to separate this population from this other population, for better or for worse. But he hasn't adjusted to that, partly because he had a big political success with one thing, and then that's what you do. You kind of stick with the move that appears to have worked for you, even when the politics on the ground have changed.
But he had that chance to do that, right? When we had the debate about DACA, the I guess this was a few months ago, where Democrats were willing to kind of come on the wall. I think had the president said, great, I'm going to call that victory, get money for a wall, get money for more border security, do a deal with DACA, that brings it together.
I actually don't think that's true in an important way for this reason. So basically, the fundamental problem is that there's been this illusion that if you deal with the Dreamers, if you deal with the DACA-eligible population, that will be enough. And what Republicans found is that, no, we will not get what we see as substantive concessions on, for example, workplace enforcement and what have you, because basically on the Democratic side, there's this belief that actually the Dreamers are the entering wedge. We care about the parents of the Dreamers too. We care about this much larger population. So the idea of DACA, the idea of the Dreamers was an incredibly effective rhetorical move, but the truth is that people are interested in protecting a much wider swath of unauthorized migrants. And Republicans who took that premise at its word, then have found themselves frustrated. So I think that everyone needs to realize that the debate has moved on.
We have to move on from this debate and take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of our panel in just a moment.